All right, second question for Roger. What would you do as our state representative to get Duluth's infrastructure improved, such as our streets, sidewalks, bridges, sewers, bike paths, etc.?
Well, this comes directly back to our previous question, and with respect to Mr. Kerr, to give up on LGA would be a fundamental mistake in Minnesota. LGA is the prime way in which the state partners with local government. And local governments in Minnesota are creatures of the state. The state creates them, the state can take them away. To give up on local government aid would be to say that the state is no longer a partner to local government. And if that's the paradigm that others want to go down, I'll go down that road, but then the state needs to figure out other ways in which local governments can be viable and provide city services. I think we've seen a year in which we're not talking about fluff anymore. We closed libraries. We closed parks. I mean, the fat is gone, the muscle is gone, the bones are being cut now. And, you know, I've had to answer those calls and talk to folks and answer those emails when we can't have the West Duluth Library open as often as we want. When we had to have a friend of mine got married up at Anger Tower first weekend of this month, she needed to go down, pick the keys up from Parks and Rec herself, open the park up herself, and basically do what I call the Boundary Waters wedding. They packed everything in and packed everything out, including their garbage and you know, their bodily functions. So I don't think that's the city that any of us want to have. It's certainly not the city that I want to have. But let's keep perspective here. The city has at just under $80 million budget. Of that $80 million, 13 comes from property taxes. So when we grow the economy, which we certainly need to do, when we increase businesses in the community, which we certainly want to continue to do, we will receive more property taxes. But 13 million out of 80, we got a long way to go, a long way to go, like not in my lifetime, long way to go in order to make our entire city budget without important funding mechanisms like local government aid. So in answer to your question, Keith, local government aid continues to be incredibly important, and getting full funding of local government aid next year, in a year when the state is certainly going to stop doing other things in order to balance its budget, which is going to put more and more pressure on county government, city government, school districts, and even townships to do more and more work. And I think it's incredibly important that the state then fully fund local government aid.
Thank you, Roger. Alan?
Yes, I never said anything about giving up on local government aid. Obviously, in the short term, that's not going to get rectified. But in the long term, we do have to work towards a different system. Okay, you can't just continue to depend on LGA because you're going to continue to have city finances in jeopardy. You won't be able to do effective long-range planning because you'll never know exactly what your income is going to be then. If you had something that was more dependable, more regular, more consistent with time, that's what we need to look at. So, yeah, in the short term, you don't give up on LGA. We got to go down there and lobby as hard as we can to get our fair share. But therein lies the rub. So is every other legislator down there. They're lobbying for their communities, and rightly so. But we need to move away from all that time and wasted energy that's really spent year after year arguing for those pieces of the pie. Okay. Let's see. Can anyone really describe this formula? Probably no one in this room really truly understands the LGA formula. And that combined with other tax formulas. You know, how are your real estate taxes based? I actually asked a county assessor once, can you show me the equation that computes my real estate taxes? And he couldn't do it. And I said, well, how do you do it then? Well, we have an outfit in the Twin Cities that does the computer programming, and they run the numbers for everybody. So what I learned from that was, well, isn't it unfair if you want to add to your house or you want to build a garage, you don't know the tax effect that you have ahead of time. So a tax you can't understand really is an unfair tax. And LGA I would throw in with that. You know, it has to be simplified so ordinary people can understand what's really happening, where the money's going, where it's coming from, and then it needs to be more predictable than LGA is. In terms of infrastructure, yeah, we have the sanitary sewer overflow problem we absolutely have to deal with. That's right at the top of the list. But in terms of spending our money on other infrastructure, you know, in these more austere times, it seems to me that the city was basically forced to vote in favor of extending the lake walk, for example, because you had federal money out there. And it's one of those use it or lose it, you know, matching grant kind of things. And that is basically forcing the city to spend itself into a deficit. And so I'd like to, you know, work on and hear good discussion about how we're going to address, you know, an issue like that.
Okay.
Does that fully
Thank
answer
you.
the question?
Yes, thank you. Jay, what would you do as our state representative to get Duluth's infrastructure improved?
That is definitely a challenge. One of the things that's happened, it's our roads, our schools. That's the reason why we're having to spend $433 million or $437 million on our schools, is because nobody's been willing, as the politicians, to commit to doing something about it and pushing the limits on that, because our infrastructure is in very, very bad shape. And once again, I go back to, we're going to have to raise taxes. We're going to have to work hard at pushing the government to be more responsible with how they spend their money. I was meeting with Mr. Dixon, who is, you know, this isn't directly related to Duluth, but it's still part of it. Education is a very important part. And it was just, you know, we haven't invested in our infrastructure, and we need to invest in that. We have, you know, winters that are really tough on things. Our I&I, all of that is definitely a problem, and we need to work on making government more responsible for how they're spending their money. And we need to, you know, invest by raising our taxes and that same thing.
Thank you. Thank you for that.